The early springtime is a very challenging time for a lot of bulkheads, and it's very challenging because the weather can vary not only from day to day, but sometimes within the same storm. Just recently, we had a March storm that was half of Massachusetts and Rhode Island was a very heavy rain, while the other half got over 2 feet of snow. And some in between had rain transitioning into snow. So the early spring weather can wreak havoc on bulkheads in particular. And part of the reason isn't just because of precipitation, but also what the ground is doing. The late March, early April spring timeframe is when the ground starts to thaw a little bit. And bulkheads are very susceptible to the freeze-thaw cycle. A normal foundation, concrete foundation, or even a block foundation will have very minor, extreme minor movement with a freezing and thawing cycle. Sometimes we'll see them in foundation cracks that tend to open and close a little bit if somebody just puts hydraulic cement on. But bulkheads are a totally different story. So a precast bulkhead is going to be attached typically to a concrete foundation with 2 or 4 anchor bolts on the sides of the cutout of the foundation wall. And with that cutout, or the bolts, is that these are attached and socked on there with a high torque socket and brought right to the foundation. And then they backfill the hole that they put these in. The challenge is that now this main foundation is essentially separate from the bulkhead precast foundation. So during the freezing and thawing cycles, that dirt that they backfilled into the bulkhead hole will actually freeze and thaw and put different pressures on it versus a main foundation. So we get a rocking motion that happens. Now, when bulkheads are installed, they're not just concrete to concrete. They put a seal around the bulkhead between the concrete to concrete transition. Think of it like almost like an O-ring. And what happens is as this bulkhead, freezes and thaws and rises and falls in the early springtime, it breaks down that rubberized gasket, that O-ring that attaches there. And that's when you get leaks. So you could go all winter long, all summer long, and never have a drop coming through there. But in that early spring or late fall, you start to see the water penetrating. And once it comes in, then that's kind of the sign that the seal has broken down. So what do we do on these? Well, we can reestablish that seal on the bulkhead. Typically, it's down the sides and across the bottom where it attaches. Not the metal portion up top, that's totally separate, but the concrete to concrete transition. So we can actually drill into that seam, use our high pressure pumps, and inject a closed cell polymer resin material that's going to re-encapsulate that bulkhead, both internally in the joint and also on the outsides and underneath the bulkhead. The biggest challenge with bulkheads, even after this is done, is that you still may have a big rocking motion. So sometimes there's additional steps that are needed, but for the vast majority of bulkheads, this is enough to seal it and keep the water from coming in. So if you're in your garage or in your basement and you're seeing water coming around the bulkhead and it only happens in the springtime or only happens in the late fall, you're not crazy. This is usually when this happens. And once it starts happening, it's something that you should get fixed because it's not going to seal itself off. It does take additional steps to do that. So call us, we'll be able to help you out through the process here. It's a very straightforward repair or in and out in less than a day, and you cannot have to worry about water coming through the bulkhead, ruining the basement.